Hey guys, before we get into today's episode, I wanted to throw out a addition. I recorded this episode actually quite some time ago. I apologize, I didn't have time this weekend to record a newer podcast, so I'm kind of pulling one from the can. But there has been a very exciting update. In this episode, we're talking about suicide prevention, and since I recorded this, there is now a new suicide and crisis hotline that is a 3-digit number. It's 988. In the episode, I did leave the 1-800 number, which is 1-800-273-8255. But now anywhere within the United States, you can just dial 988 for crisis intervention. If you or anybody you know is considering ending their life, please call and reach out for help. Thank you so much. Hello and welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you so much for tuning into my show. So, before I say anything else, I am putting a massive trigger warning on this episode because today we are going to be talking about suicide. If this topic is much for you and you don't think you can handle listening to it, please stop listening and skip this episode, okay? No harm. I will not be remotely offended if you skip this episode. This is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people, okay? I'm not going to be going into like graphic details or anything. We're not going to be discussing anything gruesome or, morbid, anything of that nature. In fact, what we're going to talk about today is how to approach somebody who is suicidal, how to help somebody and de-escalate a situation when they are feeling suicidal. So you can have some tools in your little invisible tool belt to help somebody if they need you, okay? So once again, if this topic is too much, then please feel free to skip and tune in next week. Okay, thank you. All right, well, for those of you who are still here with me, thank you so much for sticking around. And this topic, like I said, this is very sensitive to a lot of people, but it is such an important tool to have with you to help save a life, right? To help somebody who is suicidal. All right, so before we dive into warning signs and what to do, just a few little key facts, I guess. This kind of sucks, but okay, first of all, let's start with the basics. So I think we all know what the word suicide means, right? It's death caused by injuring oneself with the intent to die, right? There's also suicide attempts, when somebody attempts to harm themselves with the intent to end their life, but they did not die as a result of their actions. But there's also suicidal ideation, and this is when someone is thinking about suicide. Okay, now for the super sad part, we're going to talk statistics. Okay, the suicide rates in 2019 averaged out to 130 suicides per day and was the 10th leading cause of death for all ages. Second leading cause of death for youth and young adults around ages 10 to 34. And so there are instances of suicide under the age of 10, but the CDC does not report on that for various reasons. We won't go into that right now. About 5.8 million Americans have lost a family member to suicide, and 8.9% of high school students that were surveyed had attempted suicide, and 18.8% of high school students seriously considered attempting suicide. 90% of those who die by suicide were suffering from depression or other psychiatric illness or a substance abuse disorder. That's from the National Institute of Mental Health, not the CDC. So now, as far as suicide rates in 2020, they were actually down 3% overall, including down 8% among females and 2% among males. Now, speaking of males versus females, women will attempt suicide 4 times more often than men, but men have a higher rate of follow through. Men typically use deadlier means. The highest risk groups are middle-aged, ages 45 to 60, American Indian and Alaskan Natives, LGBTQ plus community, active duty military veterans and National Guard, suicide loss survivors. Suicide survivors are people who have lost those around them to suicide. So those are some pretty frightening statistics. And I've watched the numbers go up and down in the years I've worked at the suicide hotline. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that in either previous episodes or in my trailer that I'm a volunteer for the suicide hotline in Columbus, Ohio. So I've gone through copious amounts of training for this. But yeah, it's frightening. So, okay. Now, let's go. Okay, sorry. One more before we go into warning signs. Let's just talk real quickly about the stigma surrounding mental health and suicide. I think we can all agree there's a lot of stigma around suicide and mental health issues, right? I don't think anybody would ever argue that. Well, maybe they would, but it's probably because they got their head in the sand. So because of the stigma and lack of awareness about resources and how anybody can help, it's detrimental. A lot of people are afraid to even think about suicide or somebody around them dying by suicide, right? Because there's so much stigma around it. And because of that stigma, we don't have the amount of resources we should. There are resources available that people don't always know about, but we can have more. And we really need to strengthen and enforce laws regarding discrimination against mental illness, right? How many people are in jail right now because of a mental illness? How many people are homeless right now because of mental illness? And we can add addiction issues to that as well, because nobody wants to deal with it, right? It's easier to just stick those people away and not deal with it. It's frightening and it's sad. And I'm sorry this episode's going to be a little bit of a downer, but this is a pretty heavy topic, but it is so, so important. We need to be addressing this, okay? Let's move on, because I'm just getting myself all worked up talking about stigmas. We know it's there, okay? Just think about you. Maybe you may have your own judgments around suicide, right? And just think about those and why you might have them. I'm not saying you're wrong or right, or, what you're feeling is what you're feeling. But take time to step back and just observe your thoughts and try to assess why you feel that way, right? And educate yourself a little bit by listening to this amazing podcast. Okay, so let's move on. Let's get to the nitty-gritty here. So this is based on QPR Institute. And this is from a lot of this material and information is from the most recent training I took, which is a refresher course for me on suicide prevention. Okay, so QPR stands for question, persuade, and refer. We'll get into that in a minute. So, you know what? I'm just going to share a couple more things. I'm sorry, we will get to this, I promise. I am so scattered. So there's some myths and facts about suicide that I've heard a lot, and you may have heard too. And some of them you might possibly believe, and that's not saying you're, not smart. You just don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. Anyway, so there is a myth out there that confronting a person about suicide will just make them angry and increase their risk of suicide. That is not true. That is not true at all. Talking to somebody directly about their suicidal ideations or intent helps actually lower their anxiety. And most importantly, it opens up communication. It lowers their risk of an impulsive act just by talking to them, right? And only experts can prevent suicide. No, literally anybody can. You listening right now, you can prevent a suicide. Anybody can prevent a suicide. Does not have to. Yes, professionals might need to be involved for longer term care, but preventing suicide is about taking immediate action, right? It's not about long-term care. That will come after. Okay. Another myth, suicidal people tend to keep their plans to themselves. That's not always true. That can be true, but most of the time, suicidal people will communicate their intent somehow or sometime in the time leading up to their attempt, be it direct or indirect, right? Vague booking. Keep an eye on your friends. It might be vague booking, saying things that might imply that they're thinking about harming themselves. Another myth, like once a person decides they're going to complete suicide, nothing can stop them. Again, that's not true. Suicide is the most preventable kind of death. And almost any positive action can save a life. Okay? All right. Now I'm there. I'm right there talking about clues and warning signs. First of all, any clues, any warning signs, anything that you see in somebody, take them seriously. Okay? Like they teach you in gun safety classes, treat all guns like they're loaded, right? We need to treat all clues and warning signs seriously. They may not be, but if they are and you brush it off saying, I don't know if they're serious, take it seriously. Take all these seriously. Now there's like straight up direct verbal cues, like somebody straight up saying, I wish I was dead. I'm going to kill myself. I want to end it all. I've decided I'm going to kill myself. There's like more indirect verbal cues. I'm just so tired of being here. I can't go on. Everybody would be better off without me. Nobody cares if I'm dead. I don't want to be around much longer. Nobody's going to have to worry about me pretty soon, things like that. But also look for behavioral clues, right? Have they had prior suicide attempts? Have they recently acquired a firearm, or are they stockpiling pills? Have they had, a sudden shift in moodiness and hopelessness? Are they giving away prized possessions and putting their affairs in order? Sudden interest or disinterest in religion? Like there's serious drug or alcohol abuse or relapse if they're in recovery. Just unexplained, severe emotional shifts. So those are some like behavioral clues you can look for. Situational clues. Did they just lose a job? Did they just a loss of a major relationship? Did they just get divorced? Were they just ostracized from their family or friends? Did they just lose somebody? Death of like their spouse, child, especially if they just lost somebody by suicide. We talked about that earlier. One of the higher risk peoples are peoples who have lost somebody to suicide. They just get a diagnosis of a serious or terminal illness, unexpected loss of, freedom. Like, are they, found out they're going to jail, loss of financial security, like I mentioned, losing a job. There's a lot of situational things that could happen that could lead somebody to think about suicide, right? So if you think somebody around you is suicidal, before we get to the questions you should ask, first off, if you are in doubt, doesn't matter. Don't wait. Don't hang out to see what might happen or how it'll play out. Ask. Okay? And if the person's reluctant about talking about it, be a little persistent. Show them you care. Talk to the person alone in a private setting if you can. Don't confront them in public, obviously. But most importantly, allow them to talk freely. No judgment. Do not judge. Do not judge. Don't judge. Don't do it. If you're not sure, or you don't want to just jump out there and be like, hey man, are you thinking about killing yourself? Maybe start a little less direct. I've noticed you've been feeling unhappy lately. Is something going on you'd like to talk about? Have you been feeling really sad recently? Lead up to, have you been feeling like really bad that you've been thinking about hurting yourself? Things like that. Then go to the direct approach. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Pause this, and I want you to say that out loud. I want your voice to, with your facial muscles and your vocal folds, know how to say this question out loud. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Okay? Tone is everything too. Be kind about it. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Okay? No judgment. You're looking pretty sad today. You're looking pretty bad. I'm wondering if you're thinking about suicide. If you cannot ask this question, if you just cannot bring yourself, find somebody who can. Do not just brush this off and ignore it. I cannot say enough. Do not brush this off. Take everything seriously. Said that already. Okay. I talked about tone a minute ago. There's ways to not ask this question. You're not thinking about killing yourself, are you? That sounded kind of judgmental, didn't it? That makes it sound like they're about to do something that you're judging as stupid or bad, right? Or you wouldn't do anything stupid, would you? You're going to make them feel worse, you guys. Or, okay, suicide's really selfish and stupid. You're not thinking about that, are you? Okie dokie. We'll get into the selfish thing later, some other time. But these are very judgmentally phrased questions, right? Calling it stupid, calling it a dumb idea. Because they're going to take that as you calling them stupid or dumb, right? And that's the last thing you want to say to somebody who's feeling so badly they're thinking about taking their own life. Do not call them stupid or dumb, okay? They are hurting. And if they're hurting bad enough that they want to end their own life, the last thing they need is judgment. That's not, I'm getting all teachery voice. All right. So those are the questions. Be direct, okay? And if you can't, find somebody who can. Now, persuade. You need to persuade somebody to stay alive, right? That's what we're trying to do here. Persuade them to not take their own life. If they start talking, listen to them. Give them your full attention. Talked about this a lot. Listen and really listen. Give them room to talk, okay? Suicide is not the problem. It's the solution to a perceived insolvable problem, right? Just no judgment, offer hope and help in any way you possibly can, all right? Okay, before we move on, I'm going to give you the 3 most important words you will hear in this entire podcast. The 3 most important words that I want you to remember above anything else. Once you've asked them, they're thinking about hurting themselves. If they say yes, and they explain anything, even if they just say yes, or if they say, yes, my husband just died, yes, I just lost my job, yes, whatever, the next 3 words that should come out of your mouth are, tell me more. That's it. Tell me more. I'm so sorry. Tell me more. Okay, this shows that you care and you want to help them. This could be the key thing that sparks them to know that somebody out there wants to help. Okay? Okay. Other questions you can ask when you're trying to, help them is, would you like me to go with you to get help? Will you let me get you some help? Can you promise me you won't not to kill yourself until we found some help, right? This is one of the things we're taught in the suicide hotline because we're not face to face with these people, we're over the phone, right? So we're a little limited in what we can do, but our goal is to get them to promise us that they will remain safe and that they will get the help they need. They'll go to an emergency room, go to a trusted friend, go to a counselor, therapist, whatever. We make them tell us their plan, what they're going to do as soon as they hang up the phone, what they're going to do 5 minutes after that and 5 minutes after that. Our goal is to keep them safe for the next 24 hours, right? So offer to go with them and mean it, you guys. Don't say, can I go with you? And then say, oh, no, I got this meeting, I got to go. Make them promise you that they won't hurt themselves till we get help, right? From here, we go to referral. So try to find them some help. Like I said, there's great resources out there. You can call the suicide hotline if you're not suicidal. If you're helping somebody who is, you can call. It's okay. We get calls like that all the time, and we actually love those calls because we're talking to somebody else who really cares, somebody who wants to help somebody close to them. Suicidal people often believe that they can't be helped. So you might have to push them a little harder, okay? You might have to directly take them to someone who can help. Don't just have them say, yeah, I'll go, talk to my cousin. And then say, okay, cool, and leave. You might have to take them there, okay? Best thing you do is get a commitment for them to accept help and make the arrangements for them. Call the suicide hotline. Drive them to the emergency room. Drive them to a crisis center. Best thing you can do is take them directly to someone else who can help if you can't, right? Awesome. So I mentioned how suicidal people might might not believe they can be helped. Okay. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an inside perspective because I've had suicidal ideations more than once in my life. I've had suicide attempts in my life as well. Okay. I'm fully open about that. I'm not afraid to discuss it. I won't go into details, obviously, but I have been there, and I can't explain in a way that everybody can understand how it feels, right? Because only I know how it really feels. But it really, for me, I got to points where not a single person in this world could have convinced me that I was worth anything, okay? My own mother probably couldn't have convinced me. Like, it's so dark in there, and it's so impossible to see any light. It's like somebody put a black bag over my head, and that's all there was. You just feel so beyond help and so not worth the help, right? If you have never been suicidal, you can't fully understand it, okay? But that doesn't mean you can't be compassionate, and that doesn't mean you can't be sympathetic or empathetic. So, okay. Other things you can say to somebody, especially once we've gotten to the point of getting them help or talking to them, getting them to open up. There are some very, very, very amazing things you can say to somebody. Very simply, I want you to live. I'm on your side. We'll get through this, right? Get other people involved. Talk to this person. Do they have family members they can talk to? Friends, brothers, pastor, priest, physician, therapist, anything. Offer to work with them and take them to their people that they feel open to. Another super important thing you can do, guys. The next day, follow up with them. Visit them, call them, text them, whatever feels comfortable with you and your relationship with this person. Tell them that you still care and that you are still there for them and you want to know what happens. That follow-up call, I mean, you saved their life, okay? They did not follow through with their suicide, and you saved their life. That doesn't mean they might not get right back there the next day. You following up them could be that little spark in their brain that says, holy shit, somebody does care. Maybe I need to get help, right? Awesome. So just some wrap-up things. No judgment. Be concerned. No judgment. Don't give unsolicited advice or pep talks, you guys. Don't do that. Nobody likes unsolicited advice, right? Just listen and let them talk. Just like grief, let them talk, okay? I should have put this at the beginning. Maybe I'll go back in and edit it in. But the National Suicide Hotline number is 1-800-273-8255. I want you right now, while you're listening to me, take out your cell phone and save that phone number. Put that phone number in your cell phone. Save it. Maybe you'll never need it, but you might be with somebody who does. 800-273-8255. Save it. Okay? Deal? Deal. All right. That got a little heavy. One more little clue. I should have put this in the beginning, but you may have heard that we've gone away from using the term committing suicide or committed suicide, right? This goes back to that judgment. And I noticed I didn't get into anything about religion, but the term committed suicide was brought about in the era when suicide was considered a sin, right? Or a crime. It's like committing adultery, committing murder. They committed suicide. This is why we don't say that anymore. Just use terms like died by suicide, took their own life, okay? We do not need to say commit. Please don't say commit. That's what I grew up with. I've struggled. Sometimes I've said it on accident, so it's okay, but you really need to not say commit suicide. It's frowned upon these days, right? Okay. Wow. This was long and this was really deep and hard. So I'm sorry, all my podcasts won't be this way. But this is such an important topic. Save this one, listen to this one, share this with your friends. Put that phone number in your cell phone, you guys. This information that I gave you today could very well save somebody's life. You could save somebody's life just by giving a shit. Pardon my French. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you listened to this and you took something from this, thank you. Take this knowledge, save a life if you can. Be there for somebody in their absolute darkest moment, if you can. If you can't, find somebody who can. Call me. Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Have a lovely week, and I'll see you next episode. Good Grief was brought to you by me. You can find me online at nikkithedeathdoula.com. Today's episode was produced by me. Research and scripts written by me. Your host is me. Editing and sound design also me. Music is not me. Music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. License information can be found at filmmusic.io/standard-license. Special thank you to my best friend and husband for constantly reassuring me that I don't suck.